Hey guys, it's Jason Creel and this is the Lawn Care Life, and I'm standing in a emerald zoysia lawn, and I'm going to talk to you today about zoysia grass in general, the pros and cons of it. I deal with a lot of zoysia grass in my area, as well as Bermuda grass, centipede grass, St. Augustine grass. But let me tell you about zoysia grass and what I encourage people to do when I'm dealing with my own customers in my lawn care business, and just some of the pros and cons of a zoysia grass lawn compared to other grass types. Let's get started right now. Okay, so we're looking at this yard in early April, and you can see it is mostly green. Now it will be greener as the summer goes on, I imagine. But we're just now coming out of dormancy. The weather, is in the 70s. We had a frost last week, but I would say this looks, pretty decent for this time of year. Like I said, it's not had any fertilizer on it. And matter of fact, if I had to guess, I don't think there's been much of any weed control on this particular yard. It's not one of my customers in a long time, if ever. Okay. So when I start off talking about pros and cons of zoysia grass and comparing to other grass types, one of the big pros to it is you have a situation like this where if this was a Bermuda grass lawn and you had no treatments done to it in years, like I think is the situation with this one, it would not look near this great. Okay, now is this yard perfect? Of course not. It's got weeds all, there's weeds here, but it's not a yard where I'm sitting here early April where I'm seeing a bunch of crabgrass from previous years that's going to be coming back this year. So, first pro I want to mention is just it does a pretty good job of choking out weeds on its own, even with no applications. And when you do spray it, then it is excellent at keeping the weeds out, much superior to Bermuda grass, and I would say even superior to centipede and St. Augustine in that aspect. Now, again, you might look at this yard and say, Jason, the thing's got weeds all in it. Yeah, it does, but again, no treatments in a long time, if ever, on this particular yard. And it's just one particular weed that seems to be all over the lawn in this situation. And there's a few others, but I could get this yard cleaned up. Literally, I feel like in one application, it would pretty much take care of everything in this lawn, just with something like metsulfuron or Celsius or something like that would get rid of a lot of these weeds. Other advantages of zoysia grass. I just think it to me, is the most aesthetically beautiful yard that we deal with. Well, I talk to my customer, and I've got hundreds of customers for my lawn care business, and I tell them, we do weed control and fertilization. I say, listen, the best yards I have are zoysia. I mean, it's just the truth. I mean, now it doesn't mean all my zoysia yards are superior to all the other yards. It doesn't mean that my centipedes and St. Augustines and Bermudas can't look good. They certainly can, but the ones that just like, wow, look at that yard, they are typically zoysia lawns. And this emerald zoysia, I mean, it grows so thick and nice, and it just looks great to me, holds good color. So I think that's an advantage, is just how thick it grows. Now, it can be difficult to cut with a lawnmower in those situations, but that's what, in my opinion, helps choke out a lot of the weeds. There's just not a lot of room for a seed to germinate in there. Now, again, you've got some weeds, but you don't have near the crabgrass problems you would on a Bermuda grass lawn. Okay, another pro, and this is a huge one, especially for us in the South, dealing with warm season grasses, is zoysia grass has a much improved shade tolerance over Bermuda grass, over centipede grass, and I would say, yes, even slightly better than St. Augustine grass. So for us, when we have a customer that has an area that's not getting enough sunlight for Bermuda to grow, even if they have a Bermuda lawn, oftentimes we'll encourage them. It's like, hey, you could put down some emerald zoysia in that area, or some Zorro zoysia, which is one I've got at my house that looks very similar to emerald zoysia. It would look, very similar to the Bermuda. Now I can tell them apart. It's thicker. It looks like Bermuda that's just a lot thicker, to be honest with you. But it will grow near that shade tree or whatever. Now, it won't grow in a closet. It's what I tell people. It's not going to grow in no sunlight. And people often confuse this with something I was taught years ago. So Bermuda grass is just not very shade tolerant. You'll see oftentimes in a situation where you have Bermuda grass lawn or centipede oftentimes, and it'll start getting thinner and thinner the more it gets to shade, whether that be the side of a house, the side of a fence, underneath a tree. And people was like, look, my yard's getting thin when in a situation. I said, yeah, it's just simply a matter of sunlight. And so you can put some zoysia there and it will handle that area where the Bermuda grass is thinning out. Now, what I was taught years ago, and this is very true, is that when we say shade tolerant, doesn't mean that it thrives in shade or it loves shade, but it will tolerate shade much better than a Bermuda grass lawn or centipede grass lawn. Now, I'd be careful mixing, you know, like an emerald zoysia with centipede. To me, they look quite a bit different, but if you got like a Myers zoysia or a Z52 zoysia, it has a little bit wider leaf blade on it, and to me that would blend in better with centipede if you were going to go that route. But you know, those two grasses don't, you know, typically mix as well as Bermuda and zoysia. Now, along those same lines, let me show you over here. You know, as you get under all these trees right here, I mean, it's going to be difficult to get grass to grow right here, no matter what. But there are some areas, as I walk over here, where, and this is a different yard, it doesn't have zoysia in this area, but you can see here, this is centipede, and it's on a slope, and it's getting thinner and thinner as it gets over here. Now, let's just say that on this slope, you've got a lot of erosion problem because it's washing, there's no grass here to hold it. If you got zoysia to grow here, and I firmly believe that zoysia would grow here, because yeah, it's gonna have a lot of sunlight and these, you know, a lot of shade from these trees, but it's gonna get some sun too because it's pretty open, you know, on this side of the yard. So the sun's gonna come in, and I believe that you could get a nice stand of zoysia right here, and it would definitely help with that erosion problem. So whether you're just trying to fix a bald spot that's not, you know, handling the shade very well, or at the same time, if it's on a slope and you're getting some wash because of the grass being thin, then, you know, the zoysia can fix your problems there. Along those same lines, oftentimes I see where you have a slope and the Bermuda grass just gets thin in the wintertime. I mean, even if it's flat and in the sunlight, it still gets really thin in the wintertime. If you mow it short, you can basically see all the way through the dirt. I can't see all the way the dirt on this zoysia grass. It's growing so thick. So if you put it on a hill, it's just gonna help big time. It'll hold a hill much better than Bermuda grass will, or centipede grass will, or St. Augustine grass, in my opinion. It does very good at that. So not only is it gonna look better, but it's gonna hold that dirt in place. Another big advantage, in my opinion, of zoysia grass is that you can still treat it like a Bermuda grass lawn. So, you know, for us from a lawn care perspective, we're out there spraying yards all day, and my Bermuda zoysias, it's almost the same plan for both of those. Now, there are some slight differences, but we use basically the same fertilizer, maybe a little bit less on the zoysia lawns, about 2 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet for the calendar year. We can go a little bit more on that on the Bermuda. You can actually go a lot more if you don't mind mowing grass a lot. But anyway, it's the same program. You can use a lot of the same herbicides on the Bermuda and zoysia lawns, where centipede and St. Augustine are more sensitive, and you got to have a different program, different products. So what I'm saying is it's a little bit easier to keep your weeds out. So not only do you not get as many weeds in your zoysia lawn, you can use products. The zoysia is more tolerant of those herbicides that can get those tough weeds out. So for instance, if you got Dallas grass in a centipede lawn, I mean, there's just not a whole lot of options in that situation. But in a zoysia lawn, you can use Tribute Total multiple times and try to get rid of it. You know, there's products like that out there that zoysia grass will tolerate, where centipede or St. Augustine will not. All right, so those are some of the advantages of the zoysia grass, and I'm sure there's some I'm leaving out, but let me talk about some of the disadvantages, and again, just comparing with other warm season grass types. Some of the disadvantages would be, one, it just costs more, and the reason is it's slow to grow, you know. So sod farms, they cut their zoysia grass, and oftentimes, I know last year I was calling around trying to get some zoysia grass for a family member, and I called several sod farms, maybe it was May or June, something like that, and they're like, I'm sorry, we're out of zoysia, I'm sorry, we're out of zoysia, we're out of zoysia. You know, once they cut it, that first cut of the year, it might be a long time before they get any more that year, if at all they get any more that year, you know. So where Bermuda grass just grows so fast, they can get more cuttings. So oftentimes you're going to pay almost double, or sometimes more than double, for a pallet of zoysia sod than you would for a pallet of Bermuda sod, and it's typically more expensive than centipede and St. Augustine as well. Along those same lines, Zoysia grass does not spread quickly. So if you've been watching me on YouTube, I plugged my several acre yard with bermuda grass and just watched it spread quickly, fertilizing it spread. If I had did that with Zoysia grass, I may be dead before it's filled in the whole yard. I mean, it just takes a long time. It's very slow to spread. So if you get a big bare spot in your lawn and say it's 6 feet in diameter, and you say, oh, if it's bermuda, I just tell the customer, like, listen, that'll be filled in by the summer. If it's Zoysia, I say that'll be filled in about 3 years. You may want to go ahead and buy a few pieces of sod and patch that in. Very slow to spread. Doesn't mean it's slow to grow. I mean, you still need to mow it and things like that, but does not spread horizontally very fast at all. I would say another disadvantage is when compared to bermuda grass, Zoysia grass is not as drought tolerant. About 4 years ago now, we had a fairly severe drought, at least for our area. It was August and September. I think we went basically 2 months, maybe 3 months with no measurable rain. And it was during a hot part of the year. Well, I had a centipede lawn at the time, and it survived, though it was very crunchy, but it came back the next spring. It finally went dormant, and I thought, well, we'll see next spring if it comes back. Bermuda grass, I hardly saw any of those die. Of course, if it was new sod, it may have died, but Zoysia lawns, they do not handle that well at all. And then when they get damaged, they're not quick to bounce back because it's not going to recover near as quick. So even if it starts turning brown, you may want to go ahead and put the water to it before that happens if you can, or you start seeing the least little discoloration, because where a Bermuda grass yard might turn almost completely brown from lack of water, if you start watering it, boom, it turns green again, where the Zoysia is going to be slow. And if it sure enough dies, then you're gonna have to wait a long time for it to fill back in from the sides, if you get a dead spot in the lawn. On a similar note, you can imagine if you were to get grub damage in a Zoysia lawn and it goes into the winter with poor roots because of the grubs eating it, then you're gonna end up in a situation where it could end up with some winter damage, because it just didn't have a good root structure, and then you get a cold hard winter and it damages it, and then guess what? It's not gonna bounce right back in the spring. It's gonna be slow. So keep it watered. It might not be a good idea to put Zoysia out there, especially in full sun, if you're not planning on watering the lawn. Now in this situation, it's almost perfect for Zoysia, in my opinion. Now, I mean, of course, I think it would thrive if it was in full sun, but this is getting a lot of sun, but it is a little bit protected from just all day sun. So even if this is not watered, it may be able to survive, and not get beat up quite as bad from a drought. Well, I appreciate you watching the video. That's it for the Zoysia lawn tips, pros and cons. It's a great grass. I love Zoysia. I wish my whole yard was Zoysia. I just can't afford it because I've got several acres in my house, and I believe I could have spent $100,000 sodding my yard in Zoysia. Instead, I spent about $1,000 in Bermuda and watch it spread, and I'm gonna make that Bermuda look great as well. But I do love Zoysia, a lot of uses for it, and I do appreciate you watching the video. I've got over 600 lawn care videos on the channel, so if you enjoyed it, hey, give me a thumbs up. Let me hear your questions, comments, and let me hear from you. What videos and topics would you like for me to talk about on the channel? And if you enjoyed this one, please let me know that as well. If you're in the lawn business, go to lawncarelife.com. There's resources available for you there to help you get started in the mowing business, weed control, and fertilization business. I got all kind of stuff on the website for those that are in that industry. Talk to you guys later. Bye.